really good. Like she'd be
booting
them fools out. Okay. Oh wait.
Did you do it?
Oh yeah, I already did it. Okay, I missed the countdown.
So
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Okay, are you gonna sit on Olive? What's going on, Mac?
Not much.
Okay, you literally just like skated in here last minute.
My skates, my
Heelys.
Heelys.
Your skates. Did you ever have Heelys when you were a kid?
Yeah, of course you did.
I know, right? Okay, now come straight.
He's ready.
All right, go, dude. Okay, there you go. Okay, I have a client of mine that is in their 20s right now, and they just got a pair of Heelys.
I actually respect that so much.
Do you really? Do you think you could steal Heely, I guess?
Yes.
Is the question.
I don't think you ever lose that ability.
I never actually could do it.
You never had that ability.
Did you ever have, did we have the, hey Mac.
Hey.
She say hi. Hey, I am Tony over at they call me Tony. Some call her Mackie. Got to get in frame here. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist, a certified mindful habit coach, writer, speaker, husband, father of 4. And then you are?
Jobless.
Jobless. You're my jobless daughter. You are a licensed cosmetologist, aka a hairapist, I believe is what it's been called before.
That's what you call it.
I know. I do like that though a lot because I know we talked about this before. If there are any licensed cosmetologists that are listening, I mean, you do more, not more therapy than I do, but you do some pretty deep therapy.
Do a lot of listening.
You do a lot of listening, exactly. And then you have scissors in your hand a lot of times.
Yeah. While I listen.
Yeah, exactly.
So
but
get crazy.
We would really enjoy if you have any questions, relationship questions tonight. If you have mental health related questions, I think I need to say some disclaimer like my advice is not to be in replacement of real therapy, but I am a real therapist.
But basically.
No. No. So we want your questions, and we have a few questions that we have a few questions that are left over from the last time that we did a live. It's been a little bit. And so we're going to jump in a little bit with boundaries. We're going to talk about those. Boundaries are a trip because
I feel like I'm still kind of learning
what
they even are.
Yeah, and I think so many people think that they are setting a boundary, and really they're given an ultimatum. And there's a big difference between a boundary and an ultimatum.
You dropped that bomb on me for the first time, and I still...
Did it blow your mind?
I still don't even understand.
Well, so here's the question, and I got this question earlier, and this is in, so I've got a number of podcasts. I've got one called The Virtual Couch, which is a general mental health podcast, and I've got one called Waking Up to Narcissism. So I talk a lot about narcissism, emotional immaturity, what's the other thing? Nice guy syndrome. But I have a private women's Facebook group for people who are in relationships with a narcissistic fill-in-the-blank, and that doesn't mean like fill-in-the-blank, you dirty rotten, but it can be a narcissistic spouse, partner, parent, boss, that sort of thing. But actually for anybody that is new, that is just joining us, I really make it a big deal though that we toss around the word narcissism as if 80% of the population are narcissists.
See, this is shocking to me too when I've heard you say this, because I really did think that it was so common.
Did you really?
Because I think it became a buzzword.
Oh, it is a buzzword.
Right? Like probably still is.
Well,
but,
it
so
is.
I thought it was so, like I just thought half the population had it.
Yeah.
Or like were diagnosed narcissists.
And really narcissistic personality disorder is, and I like we already got a good question, is it on the rise? We'll talk about that.
Or is it social media? And I
think
part
social
of it
media?
Is social media because, a buzzword is like a social media thing.
Kelly, hey, it's been a little while. Good to see you. So, but narcissistic personality disorder is believed to be somewhere maybe 3 to 5% of the population. But early on in this podcast, after having done therapy with for over 15 years, working with at that point maybe over 1,000 couples and seeing some narcissistic traits and tendencies, noticing that we all have these traits and tendencies, but then what you really can put it under is this umbrella of emotional immaturity. And I don't know, you can maybe take a guess. Is it, you think it's easier for somebody to hear, I think you're a narcissist versus I think you might be a little emotionally immature?
I mean, I'd rather be a little immature.
Yeah, exactly, right? Yeah. So
you can deal with that.
You can. And so I really do maintain that we are all emotionally immature. But then when it comes to narcissistic personality disorder, that's, again, a small percentage of the population.
Forgot to pay.
What? Forgot to pay. Hey, is the filter not working?
I know.
Usually it's like a curly hair. I got the mustache and the glasses and that sort of thing, too. That's, Elias, I love this. Advice for high school freshman year. Going into a freshman year. Why don't you jump in with that? Do you remember? That wasn't that long ago for you.
Wait, what? Are you joking?
I mean, it's closer than it was for me.
It's been like 10 years.
It would have been 10 years for you, right?
Yeah.
So advice, though, is I really do think that, boy, what do you remember about your freshman year, honestly?
Just being terrified.
Yeah, and everybody, what I think is the funniest
scary.
is everybody that was a senior looked like an adult.
Yeah, and now you look at seniors and like you
They look like little
12.
kids. Yeah, exactly, right?
But it doesn't matter what people think, is I think the biggest thing. Like I just cared so much what everyone thought all the time, and so I felt like people were watching me constantly, and they're just not, like, it's just not that deep.
They're all thinking about their own stuff.
Yeah.
Everybody's
Everyone
worried
has stuff
about that.
going on, like, it's just not that deep.
Yeah.
And then I feel like just do stuff.
Yeah.
Like, if you have the chance to do something, do it.
Here is some advice, and we'll probably get to this a lot tonight, but some of the things I think are so fascinating that apply to almost everything mental health related is we are wired to alleviate discomfort. So think about going into a freshman year, and that is incredibly uncomfortable. So what do you do with that discomfort? A lot of times we kind of, I call it, we play small. We maybe think something, we want to say something, we want to go out for some sort of team or club, but then we don't want to because it feels uncomfortable. But the sooner that you can learn that we are all going through a lot of discomfort in our lives, and what you can do with that discomfort, learn to sit with the discomfort. I'm not even going to say jump right to embracing discomfort, because that's a big leap. But if you can just go to, oh, okay, I'm noticing that I'm uncomfortable. Because what do you do with your discomfort? A lot of times if somebody, let's say that you call me some bad name, which I can't even imagine you doing as my daughter.
I tell you you're dumb a lot.
Okay, so you tell me I'm dumb. So, so if that made me feel uncomfortable, then what would I do with my discomfort? I would say such hits as, oh no, you're dumb. Or your mom is dumb, even though that's my wife. But in those scenarios, though, it's like what we do to alleviate our discomfort. So just learn to be able to acknowledge, sit with a little bit of that discomfort, because that's your cue to grow. Because there's a lot of things happening there where if it is uncomfortable, we're wired to just eliminate, alleviate, and get rid of our discomfort and run away. So if somebody brings something up to you and they say, hey, I don't like the way you did that, instead of just going, oh man, I'm sorry, because in reality, I did that because I did that. That's something that I did. So that's actually a you issue. Now, you don't say it that way. That sounds kind of aggressive. But then when you can recognize that, oh, well, I'm just doing and being. I'm just going about my life for the very first time as me, and the interaction or the reaction you're having, well, tell me about that, because I'm just trying to figure myself out. But I do think, though, that we like you said earlier, we're so worried about what other people think, and I want to just normalize that. Don't think that anything's wrong with you if you're worried about what other people think.
No, I think it's not, because I vividly remember just walking down the halls of high school and thinking everyone's like looking at me and staring at me and thinking all these things, and it's like they just aren't.
Yeah.
Or if they are, it's a brief observation.
I was going to say the same thing.
It's a second, and then it's done, and then they're thinking about the millions of other things they have going on.
It is, which is one of those interesting things. I think that's why. I mean, it is. It's why we compare ourselves to others so much. Because kind of inherent in our nature is that we don't want to be, we're afraid we're going to be alone. We're afraid that we're going to get booted out of our tribe or our people. And so then we're kind of comparing, saying, okay, how do I fit in with this person? Or do I seem incredibly different than this other person? But that's kind of left over from our old evolutionary biological Neanderthal brain, which is saying, if these guys don't like me, then I'm going to be, thrown out to the wolves at night, and that's probably not going to happen.
Probably.
Yeah, unless I guess you live.
There are coyotes here.
There are. I saw one.
You could throw me out to the coyotes.
But I saw one though. I saw one behind our house.
They're not
he
all
was
that
little and he was cute.
But they're not all little.
He looked adorable. I know.
Some of
them are
large.
Giant wolf dogs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so and get your questions in. We've got Sydney is moderating tonight. If you have been around here for a while, Sid is, she's on it. If you know, Sid's on it. She's moderating, and she'll be throwing some questions up on a document.
So following up that, how do we fix feeling self-conscious then?
Okay, so great question. And this will actually get us into some really cool stuff. So how do we fix it? So the first thing is just recognizing it. And I will say this, I was going to say till the cows come home. Is that a phrase? Do you know that one?
Maybe from like
I don't know
the
where.
1800s.
Probably, yeah, when I was a young boy. But here's the first thing: is if you didn't even know something and now you're aware of it, you start with that we don't know what we don't know. So now all of a sudden, if I'm hearing, okay, it's okay to know that I'm worried about comparing myself, or I'm worried that other people are thinking about me, then that's the first step. Because the first thing we were doing is just reacting. Oh my gosh, everybody's looking at me. But now it's like, okay, I'm noticing that I think people are looking at me. Now, is that a true statement? Is that a false statement? I'm not really sure. But when I can just put a little bit of that separation. I'm noticing that I'm feeling like everybody's looking at me. Now I can actually then use that little gap, that little distance, to then just now go and do something and invite those feelings to come along with me. So I'm not trying to get rid of them, because again, that's like telling you right now, all of you listening, do not think about a.
Don't say a polar bear.
I'm not now. Okay, now okay. You just did it, right? Don't think about a polar bear like, oh, I'll think about a polar bear.
You think about that polar bear,
but none of you
Nobody.
think about a I can't even think about what, like
a blue goat on a skateboard.
Just did it. So when we're told not to do something, even in our own minds, our immediate defense mechanisms are, I'll do that. It's like I was talking to somebody today, and they were saying that when their friend gets really kind of emotionally kind of just amplified or up in their feelings, then that's where everybody's like, just calm down. You need to calm down. And what's the first thing you're going to be doing now? It's like, I will not calm down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then saying something sarcastic and yeah.
Yeah, or don't worry about it.
You look much older than her.
I am slightly older. I am her father.
30 years, my guy.
Like, oh yeah, I'm like literally 30 years,
30
right?
years.
Not to the day, but
to the month.
Yeah.
The month.
But so kind of back to that, in that scenario though, the first thing is just to notice. This is a thought I'm having. This is a feeling I'm having. Because one of the best things you can do as well. So we've already covered what themes of the night. What do we do with our discomfort? Be aware of it. But then also, I am not my feelings. I am not my thoughts. I am Tony. This is Mackie. I have the feelings. I have thoughts. And so often we just kind of think, okay, what is wrong with me? I'm thinking this thing. And we start from this place of nothing. Nothing's wrong with you. You're a human. You're you for the first time going through that situation. So check that out. This is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. And we talked on one of these before. That took you, do you agree with that statement? And did you fight me on it for a little while?
No.
No?
Yeah.
Okay.
You told me that all the time from the time I was like 14, and I'd be like so mad at you. Because I'm sitting, like, with anxiety. I'm sitting there so anxious. I'm like, no, I am anxious. I can't go. I can't do this. And you're like, no, you're Mackie and you're feeling anxious. And then I'd be like...
When you put it that way, I didn't sound very empathetic, did I?
No. It's like what you're just saying, just calm down. And you're like, just bring it with you. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Old man.
And now I get it.
You'd say old man.
Say you old man.
But that was, again, now, to be fair,
I get it now.
Mackie's talking about,
it's very useful now.
I would first spend some
10
time...
10 years later.
Asking... 10 years.
Literally.
I would lay on your floor and ask you about your day, and you'd tell me a bunch of things.
Tell you to F off, old man.
A little bit, and I'd be like, oh man, that sounds really rough, because it wasn't about me. And so, and then, yeah, I remember if you would say, I'm anxious, I'd be like, oh, hi, anxious, I'm Tony.
And that's when I'm sitting there in panic mode.
No, I would wait till it was calmed down a little bit. I would wait till it's calmed down.
I'm hyperventilating. You're like, hi, anxious.
I'm like, oh, hi, hyperventilating. I'm Tony. I'm noticing I'm hyperventilating.
Okay,
it's brilliant,
that
right?
Crazy.
Okay, we start off with some narcissism and boundaries. We're starting to talk about that as well. But let me pull up the questions and see if Sid has put anything on the question page.
Someone's saying that they're going to counseling again and that it's hard to admit that they need the counseling.
Okay.
But that's huge.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a big deal, and you should be so proud of yourself.
Okay, Lenny.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for bringing that up.
And that it's hard to be that vulnerable, but you are doing it. Like, that is it.
And I'm very proud of you. I don't know you. I'm very proud of you because it is, talk about it again, what do we do with our discomfort? So I think when people go get help, that's an amazing thing to do with that discomfort. There's another thing that most people do, which is to say, you know what, it's fine. I'm okay. It'll be better later. It'll be better down the road. And we'll just kind of kick that can down the road. So it takes a lot of courage to go to counseling, to get help. And I think it's really important to recognize as well that the counseling piece it's somebody that is there to listen, somebody that can share some thoughts, some ideas. You are in charge of that session. You can ask any question that you want, and I think that's really important. We've talked about this on some other ones too. So
it's like it's your thing, and you're the one that ultimately is doing the work.
Yeah.
They're just kind of guiding you through it.
Yeah, exactly.
It sounds like you are choosing yourself and doing something really big.
Yeah. And if you feel uncomfortable in the session, and I know this can be really difficult, especially if you're new to counseling, one of the best things you can do is be able to say that. Say, man, this is kind of uncomfortable for me, and you're allowed to ask.
You're allowed to admit that.
Yeah.
That's not a bad thing to admit, and your therapist or counselor or whatever is not going to, like, change the way that they help you if you admit that.
Right, yeah.
They're happy to hear it and happy that you're being vulnerable.
Well, okay, and
I would guess you're the...
No, but it's a great point, though, because it doesn't mean that, there's a lot of therapists out there. It doesn't mean that they're all going to be as empathetic and grateful that you were there, and some might say, well, that's because you're feeling this, and it's like, oh no, how about first a little validation? So just, man, tell me about that. Like, I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that's kind of a big deal too. Here's what we got. So we have some questions already. Here's some of the things we'll get to. We got racing thoughts and worried about everything. Thanks, Gary. Lila, do narcissists love the child they blame everything on? Oh man, that's a good question. And then Jornay Way, can you explain mother-father issues and how to overcome it? Absolutely. And so let me just kind of go through this boundaries thing that I'd started earlier,
yeah.
right? So here's the question that the person had sent me. They said, this is what my partner said about boundaries. I feel like my red lines can be ignored, but your red lines need to be respected and honored. It just doesn't feel fair. And then she says his boundaries seem to be more controlling than my boundaries. Then again, what's the difference between boundaries and control? What exactly is that? And I really liked this question a lot, because it goes back to when we were starting, I think, tonight, and I love going on a nice tangent, but a boundary versus an ultimatum. So let's start there. So we often think we're giving a boundary when we're giving an ultimatum. So this person went on to comment more and say that she's feeling a real connection when she's going to church, and her husband is saying that he feels like she is jamming a knife in her back every time she goes, because he says that he doesn't like going. So then he believes he's setting a boundary by saying, you need to not go if you really care about me. Does that sound like a boundary? No.
That's a threat.
It's a threat. I know, it's like that one's moved past ultimatum into threat.
Yeah.
Because that's basically saying, okay, if you love me, you will do this thing that I need you to do. And if not, then obviously you don't love me. That's a lot of judgment right there.
And that doesn't feel like love on that person's side then either. Like,
no, right?
That's not love in any way.
Yeah.
To be like, you have to do this or you don't love me.
Absolutely.
That's not fair.
It's not. And I'm glad and but it's interesting though, when somebody's in this kind of a relationship where they're asking that question, then I'm sure that this isn't the first time that they've felt that way.
Right.
Yeah. So what would your advice be there?
You're the therapist.
I know, but it's like
you're the kid.
You're the real life person though. What would you do in that scenario? What would you tell her?
What do I tell who?
The lady saying
this one?
Yeah.
Leave him?
I was gonna
get rid of him.
Honestly, Mac. I mean, there was a part of me that was like
that's gross.
But I almost wanted you to say that, because I think that's the part that we naturally go to.
Yeah.
And there's no part of me that's saying that isn't necessarily what I'm thinking as well. But look at the numbers. They're 777. Wow. Did we just win something? Like 777 people. But I think what's really fascinating about this, though, is part of the challenge is that when, let's say that she's asking a friend this situation, most of them are going to say, "Oh, you need to run. You need to leave." And here's one of the biggest challenges I think as a therapist is, now by the time I've seen, I don't know, however many 10,000 people over 20 years, that you really do start to recognize big patterns in relationships. And so I might have my own thoughts or opinions, but that's a me thing. And so I need to then take myself out of that and then see, okay, where does she want to go? So right now she just wants to try to understand boundaries and versus control. And I think what's so significant about that is, if you are the friend that is hearing these kind of questions, one of the best things that you can do is just kind of step outside of your own self or ego. And it can be really difficult. And then just, man, tell me more. We all want to feel heard and understood first. Because I think if you just immediately jump in and say, man, you got to leave this person. And if you're a little bit of a natural people pleaser, what do you, I mean, I don't know, she might in that point just go, no, you're right. But really she didn't get any help because, right?
It's not actually useful information.
Yeah, and then people mean well when they say that.
Yeah.
I think that's really, so when somebody is saying to you, what should I do? Honestly, a lot of times they may say, this is where we really think that we want like this connection or intimacy with another person, but we're almost like looking for just some validation. And a lot of times in therapy, I'll have people that will even say, no, I want you to, forget all the therapy stuff, just tell me what you would do. And so let's just say that I say right now to her, you know what, I think the writing's on the wall, I think you really need to leave him. I guarantee the first thing is going to be like, she's going to take it upon herself. She's going to do the, man, but and I'm going to get the but we've got kids, or but financially, I don't think this is something I can pull off, or but there are times where he's acting really, really good, And so that's where I just think it's so difficult when you're the friend of somebody that's asking you for this kind of advice, because I really think what they want is they want you to listen to them. Even if they're saying, hey, no, I want your advice. So do you think
there even is there actual good advice there, or is it genuinely just to listen?
That's a great question.
And let them kind of...
So I honestly, I don't think there's great advice that could be had, because I just think that person...
You don't know, too, as the friend.
Yeah.
Or even the therapist, you don't know every detail.
Absolutely. And that's what I think is so interesting, because each one of us that are going into a situation, there are so many variables that are in there. I mean, again, it goes back to, what was her childhood like? Did she see divorce? Is she afraid of divorce? Is she unsure of herself and not confident that she could provide financially? There's so many things. So then all of a sudden you're like, no, you need to leave. And I think the reason I like this one is Oh, I really want to get to Lila. I really want to get to Lila's question. We'll get to that one. Thanks, Lila. What do you do if you don't agree with your therapist about a specific point? That's so good. But in that one, I think it's so interesting, back to this point where what can be the most difficult is when I see people that are really, they're in a trauma-bonded relationship, or they just feel like they are just lost and they don't know what to do. It's taken them probably a lot to get to the point where they are asking for your advice or asking for help, right?
Yeah.
And
you don't just do that the second it happens.
No, it's been building. And so then what unfortunately even good friends will do is they will then say, okay, well, here's what I think you should do. They might offer advice, but then that doesn't mean the other person is going to do it, because we just talked about it. There's so many other variables that we're unaware of. And so then that person that's going through it will often come back to the friend, and then they'll kind of say, I'm still having the same problems. Yeah. And a good friend, sometimes this is where they will think they're setting a good boundary, and they're saying, you know what, I can't talk to you about this anymore because you're not taking my advice. And you start to see that happen more and more, and that's where people that are really going through difficult relationship issues start to feel really isolated. And that's some of the things I think just really break my heart, you know?
Yeah, that's just tough. Yeah. I don't know the answers.
Yeah. So now I think it's just to really listen, hear them, you know, and it might seem like it's difficult, or, you know, you might feel like, okay, but I just have to say this. And if you do, for sure. I mean, that's where I think it's fair to say, man, I appreciate you sharing that. And you know, I can't help myself. Can I just kind of offer advice, even if you're not really looking for advice, but I understand this is your situation, because I think that can be really difficult. But in that one, though, yeah, so I think I keep saying it, but so boundary versus ultimatum. Ultimatum is you need to not do this, you need to do this, you need to stop doing this. And
it's controlling.
Control.
Ultimatum is control.
Totally.
And you can have love or control, but you can't have both. Did I nail it or did I nail it?
I would say you can have love or control in an adult relationship, not both, but you were super close, though. But the point is very well said. Because the control is basically saying, I need you to do this to show me that you love me.
It's not just hey, these are my feelings, can we talk about it?
Yeah, no. Okay, I'm looking at right here on the TikTok screen that we've got. It says Summer of STEM, and it makes me think.
Oh, you're thinking of when I went to nerd camp.
Yeah, when you went to STEM camp.
Yeah, that's so funny.
You're gonna be a marine biologist.
I was chosen out of my entire school to go to it.
You did.
And now I'm a hairstylist.
Okay, but you have science involved there.
I do a lot of science in there.
I dare you. Okay, so then a boundary, though, when we'll finish this up. So boundary is, if you do this, then I will. So if you continue to tell me I can't, look at that. Riddle Nerd is back. Haven't seen Riddle Nerd in a while. Thank you for that Heart Me ×1 badge. That looked good on your head.
Thanks.
But then a boundary, again, is that, you know, if you're going to tell me I can't do this, then I'm going to probably remove myself from the situation, or then I can't continue to have this conversation. So it's a, if you do this, then I will. It's a me thing. So that's a healthy boundary. But know that when you set boundaries with the emotionally immature or the narcissistic person, they're not just going to go, oh, okay, cool, I respect that.
I totally respect that. Thanks for bringing it up.
They're going to push more buttons. And like, oh, well, look who got an opinion now. Or oh, okay, I guess my opinion doesn't matter. Going victim or that sort of thing. Okay, here we go. Oh, let's do that one. What do you do if you don't agree with your therapist about a specific point? Have you had that situation?
I'm so curious, because I remember a few times when I was like very actively going to therapy where there would be things where I didn't agree with it, but I felt like I had to just sit there and be like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I hear you.
I totally felt like my role was to just sit there and agree, which I think is, I'm curious because I think it's so counterproductive, because how am I going to heal and work on things if I don't even, because if I don't agree, then I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Or like, I wish it felt more like I could have a conversation and say, okay, I don't really understand that, or I actually feel this way, and then it like could be a conversation. But I definitely felt like it was I just have to sit there and my therapist will tell me what to do.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, and I just have to agree with it.
Right, and you felt like it's almost obligation to, do you think? Yeah.
Like I could not disagree with her.
Yeah, and it wasn't that she was necessarily doing anything wrong.
No, just if I had a slightly different thought or something. Yeah.
I really like this is, and I like, okay, Farley, Leathercraft, I think it's best to tell them so they can have the chance to try something different. Absolutely. I think that's a great,
it's like make it a conversation. I feel like that's, that should be allowed.
Yeah. And so,
but I don't know why I felt like I couldn't do that.
Well, and most people, you're so
but that's
normal.
So it's like, why? And so from the therapist side, it's like, what is that?
So I think it's really interesting, because, you know, here I'm going to say this, earth-shattering therapists are people too. Shocking.
What?
And then, unfortunately, or it just is, when therapists are fairly new, they are hoping to really do a lot of good. They want to try to knock it out of the park in as few sessions as they can. So a brand new therapist, and I was this way, is pretty quick to dispense advice. And so a lot of times I think that's where then if you've got a client that hasn't been to therapy very often, or it might be their first time, you got a fairly new therapist, where then they might ask a question, and then they answer it for them. But I get that. But why I really like this question though is I would love for you to keep in mind whether you're going to therapy now or if anybody is thinking about going to therapy, going to return to therapy. But everything is an opportunity for you to take a look at yourself, to self-confront and grow. I like this concept of a muse. Even the therapists themselves and the words they're saying is this thing that I get to interact with. So if it doesn't really feel right to me, now if I have rapport with the therapist, or if I'm feeling fairly confident maybe with myself, then the best thing you can do is exactly what you said, or what I think Farley Leathercraft said, that it's like, hey, can I just share with you that I don't know, tell me why you're going in that direction. I'm being the client, or because that just doesn't really feel like me. That doesn't sit right with me.
Right.
Right.
And I think that's totally what it is, because you know yourself.
You do. Yeah.
Better. The therapist is trying to get to know you, but it's like you ultimately know. Because I can think of a few things where I'm like, it didn't align with my life, and it's like, why didn't I just say that?
Yeah.
Like, then just say that. It's not, yeah.
Well, it can be scary.
Yeah. Well, because as like a people pleaser, I'm like, right? I'm going to offend them. I'm going to make them think they're not doing a good job. I'm going to, like all these things. It's like, no,
yeah.
It's okay.
Well, and so then, and if you're listening to this now, and then this is, again, what I love about this concept of people that are there, maybe they don't know what they don't know. Now they're hearing it for the first time, and they might go to therapy next time, and they're going to feel, oh my gosh, I feel like this is one of those times where I don't know if I agree, but I'm accepting the fact that I don't really feel like I can say anything. Maybe I'm too scared or too nervous, but at least you're aware of it. And so now what they're saying is just something for you to then internally take a look at, self-confront and grow. So if they're saying, I really think it would be a good idea if you did this stuff, whatever it would be, and if you really feel like that doesn't align with me. But let me kind of take a pause on that too and say, back earlier we were talking about what do I do with our discomfort. It is fair to say, okay, I don't know what I don't know, and I am coming to therapy, and I am going to this person that this is what they do for a living. So I have to keep all options open of maybe this is something that they're aware of that I'm not. So I'm gonna be open to this, but if it initially doesn't feel like very comfortable to me, then I don't have to do it. Does that make sense?
Or again, it could still be a conversation.
Yeah, that would be the best. That really would. And I think that as I was even just saying that, what's really fascinating about that is a lot of times I'll work with, so I do a lot of couples therapy, and you'll have somebody that's contemplating leaving a relationship. Maybe they're with an emotionally immature, even a narcissistic partner. And they've been thinking they're the problem the entire time. And then they come into therapy, they find out, okay, it doesn't matter what I say or do, that I can never give this person their aha moment or their epiphany. And then they start to recognize maybe I'm okay, and there isn't emotional consistency or maturity in the relationship. All these things are at play. But then at that point, then, they just feel like, okay, now that I understand that this is a me thing, you want to hear what's really funny? I forgot what question I was at. I forgot where I was going with that.
Don't ask me.
And I was turning to the thing where it's like, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to catch back up. Welcome to ADHD
What were we
Theater.
even talking about? Now you got me
I want to know.
You got me rattled.
No, because I was like, I had it.
Narcissist.
Okay, narcissist. And we were talking about, okay.
Backtrack.
Okay.
What were you even saying? I don't even remember the last 10 words you said.
I can tell.
What are you talking about? Hey.
Here's how I could gaslight you. I just asked you a question.
You didn't.
Is that a mature response, Maggie? Was it?
Oh, no. Not agreeing with the therapist.
Okay.
We're talking about that.
Okay. Let's go on.
And where did we go from there?
Okay, no. Okay.
Let's see. You were talking about someone debating leaving their relationship.
Oh! Keep going. Do you see that? That little dopamine that went boom. And
leaving the relationship.
Boundary versus ultimatum. How to recover. Oh, okay.
But you were talking about, like, sometimes you'll have someone in therapy.
Leaving the relationship.
Thinking about leaving a relationship, potentially with a narcissist
my
or
gosh.
emotionally immature.
Yeah.
But then you didn't get to the point. So I don't know where you were going to take it.
Shocking.
In my defense,
it was going to be amazing.
That's all I knew.
It was going to be probably some of the most groundbreaking and earth-shattering advice
that's
in the history
of
TikTok Q&As. I have to remember now. Here, wait, I can do this cheesy thing. Hey everybody, if you hit the like button enough, then a unicorn will run in from the door, and I'll remember what I was going to say. It was going to be so good. Okay. Sydney, do you remember what I was saying? Okay.
Ends up learning they're not the problem. You did say something about that. You're like, leaving a narcissist relationship. Sydney said, I have not been listening.
Oh, Sydney. Hey, our moderator.
But you were saying something about leaving a relationship, and then you were saying, and maybe they find out that they're not the problem.
I think I was heading into like this trauma bond thing. They're not the problem.
Okay.
And then they step back. Oh, they come into... okay. And
Spit
we're
it
back.
out.
I know, before I forget, right? So
Hurry.
I was just making this side note that when people, typically it is that, I call them the pathologically kind, the person that kindness is in their pathology. That is just who they are as a human being. So then when they're in a relationship with an emotionally immature or, dare I say, narcissistic person, they're the one that is coming to therapy, the pathologically kind person. They're the one that's trying to figure out how can I make the relationship better. And they're also the one that is starting to just feel like they're going crazy, that they're going crazy. Sydney says she's going to start listening now. Thank you, Sid. But so then she's saying that, okay, then at that point, then they're the one they are trying to take ownership of the problem in the relationship desperately when it isn't all, I mean, I'm not going to say it's none of their fault.
But it's not
so
all
like say
them.
5 to 95%, 95%
Like having
immature.
been in that situation, I can
right?
tell you.
Yeah, and you're the one that's trying to figure out
Yeah.
what can I do to make this better.
You spend every second trying to figure out, what am I doing wrong? How do I fix this? When it is like,
and so
80-20 situation.
Right? And so in that scenario, and it's because as a pathologically kind person, and I would imagine a lot of people that are here that are wanting answers on various mental health things, if you're in a relationship, that it's part of this belief we have, which I understand that if it must be me, because if it's me, then I can fix it. Because if it's not me, then
it becomes like a we all need control thing. It's just
Yeah.
another thing of that.
It's a cute,
like,
adorable version of control, though.
Because, like, at least in my experience, it's like when you've exhausted every option of trying to get the other person to even communicate with you or try to deal with something, then it's like, you're like, fine, I'll do it myself then. Like, then what can I do? How can I fix this?
How can I fix it?
And then when you're in that mindset, then you're fueling the fact that everything's your fault as they're telling you that.
Oh my
and
gosh.
then it, like, becomes this horrible...
That's a good point.
Like, you're basically confirming to yourself everything they're saying is true.
Yeah. And
when they're a narcissist or not.
It is, right? And that's where I kind of look at that as that is a little bit of that, an anxious attachment. Rachel's spot on. Yeah, because it's that person that has that anxious attachment. So then it's like, when I don't feel like, me too, 2 members of the anxious attachment club, that when it's like something feels like it's off or I need to go say, are we okay? Are we good? And unfortunately, when you're with an emotionally immature partner, then they now know, this is something that matters to you. So then if I withdraw, then that is going to keep you, right? And that's where a lot of that pursuer withdrawal happens in a relationship. So then at that point, the anxiously attached is continually trying to check in, are we okay, are we good, to the point of where it will often even drive the avoidant even further back, where they're like, we're fine, I'm good. But to the anxious, like, this doesn't seem like that's very good. Are you sure? Exactly. Okay, so let me go to... and Farley Leathercraft said, and I feel like therapists should make it clear that it's okay to speak up if you disagree. Thank you. I think that's a great point. It should be something. I often say when I get a new client, one of the first things I say is, hey, you did great by coming in here, and ultimately, that's where I was saying, it's a you thing. I want you to get the help you need, so if you don't feel a connection with me, then no problem. Speak up.
Which I like that you're open about that, because I don't think a lot of therapists are. Mm-hmm. Or even about that, because you'll talk openly too about just like you want to find a therapist that you connect with, and if that's not you, then it's like, let me help you find one, or let's like try something else. Yeah. Where it's like, I do wonder if some therapists are just like, I need the business.
I mean, unfortunately. Yeah. I'm aware that some do.
Like, I get it, but that is hard because you want the people to heal. And they can't heal if you don't connect.
Right, yeah, because the relationship that you have with your therapist, there's some belief is...
He's my dad.
He's my dad. You can do better. How dare you, Puff? Oh, yeah? I don't know. I don't know any mature responses to say these days. Okay, that was pretty...
Sorry.
Again, welcome to ADHD Theater. That was Act 2. Thank you. Right? Okay, so therapists should make it clear... Riddle Nerd has a great one. Okay. Oh, what's the difference between a DA?
Is. Do you?
I wonder if it's domestic abuser or is it a district attorney? I'm not even trying to be funny with that. Yeah. But the question is, what's the difference between a DA and a narcissist. So if you are still there, if you can maybe let me know for sure.
What did you mean by that?
Yeah, because I know I typically, when we're talking about DV, domestic violence, but DA and a narcissist, because I'll answer that. Dismissive avoidant. Okay, so
what's that?
Well, so when we get into the dismissive avoidant, and that's like one of the attachment styles. So the last thing I'm trying to do as well here is say, and there we are. Okay, is try to say that isn't something that I work with, but I'm going to own up to anything that I'm unaware of or not very confident or sure of. I'm just going to tell you I'm not really sure, because the different, I know anxious attachment, I know avoidant, and then we've got disorganized attachment styles, and then in the world of narcissism, there's a narcissistic personality disorder cluster, which is narcissism, histrionic, and borderline personality disorder. And so this is where I really put things on this spectrum. So you've got extreme, you've got diagnosable narcissistic personality disorder, which is again that 3 to 5% of the population. But at that point, then now we're on this spectrum of incredibly
3 to 5%.
Some believe, yeah. And so, but let me mention something about that though. But on that, then I think there's this just wide spectrum of extreme emotional immaturity / strong narcissistic traits and tendencies.
It's just hard to really know.
Well, it is, and I just put out. So go listen to my last Waking Up to Narcissism podcast, because I talked about narcissism versus emotional immaturity, as well as nice guy syndrome, and there's some real similarities there, but one of the the attachment styles can kind of fall into anywhere along that spectrum. So it's almost like you start talking about, when we get into the attachment styles, then you can have a dismissive avoidant, you can have an anxiously attached that's narcissistic, you can have an avoidantly attached that's narcissistic, because now we're talking about things like...
You can have an anxious attached narcissist?
Yeah, because that would be more of like the overt narcissist even, where they're going to, almost the way they alleviate their anxiety or discomfort is that aggressive control. And then with the covert narcissist, they might be even that more avoidant, because they're actually going to try to draw you into them. And then because now you're going to be in that pursuit the entire time. Yeah. And so part of where they get their narcissistic supply is from playing that avoidant role and that covert narcissism. And that's a really big mind game. Like the covert narcissism is the overt is just this overly controlling, and it can, and that's when you start dipping into emotional immaturity. Because emotionally immature people have a really difficult time sitting with any discomfort. They take any form of disagreement as you are telling them they're a completely bad person. So it's that all or nothing, black or white thinking. So then they are going to do anything they can to immediately take that one-up position, and tell you that, oh no, I didn't say it, you're wrong, I can't believe you said that. And that's where you get into like the grandiose narcissist just thinks they're right all the time. The incredibly emotionally immature person thinks that if you have a different opinion than them, period, then you think they are wrong. And that's why they I heard a phrase once where they called their spouse a contrarian. Like everything they said, it was like, on the contrary, it's the opposite. But I really appreciated that, because it really is that's where you could go in there, and if you say that I really like this food, then they're going to immediately say, you did? Like, that's funny, I thought this was garbage.
You can't just
right?
be like,
but if you
cool.
but you could just take that same thing and say, I didn't really like this, and like, oh really? This is pretty incredible. And that's where you start to see the emotional inconsistency, because there have been people that have done these we'll call them experiments, where they have done something like that, just kind of when they're testing the waters of the relationship, where they've mentioned something and then they've locked in an answer, and then they go back there and check again. Oh, Candy, thanks for the roses. And so then they go back and to that same scenario. And then here's the problem though, because if that person now is saying, oh, I have a completely different opinion, but then when you, let's say, call them out on it, now here comes that world of gaslighting. And gaslighting is a childhood defense mechanism. That goes back to that, I didn't say it, I couldn't have said it. You're the one that said it. I can't be wrong. And that's where you're really dipping into that emotionally immature world. Okay, let's go back to, let's see, Riddle Nerd. Can you have an MPD diagnosed person with a healthy attachment style? No, unfortunately not. And I think that's, if somebody's diagnosed with MPD, then that word healthy is not going to be a part of that.
Like they can't even learn that?
Yeah. Well, and so much of it, man, I could tell, I was talking with your mom about this earlier, and I just thought it was really fascinating, where it's the things that people don't know that they don't know, to the point of where, so I had an example, it was a while ago, I'm talking with a couple, and one of the people in the relationship was talking about, they were saying, yeah, and I asked all of your people in your family what they thought, and they agree with me that you're crazy, And I was able to say, so that's triangulation. So this person is then triangulating, getting other people to then say, yeah, see, they think you're crazy as well. And so then I pointed out the triangulation, and I said, so that sounds like you're asking these people to then join you, and then so that you can both tell your wife that you think that she's crazy. And he just said, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so you get it.
I was like, okay. And here was where it got even more interesting, where then I was saying, okay, so when I'm working with people that are doing this, triangulating, I will often say, okay, so then if we were able to talk to those people, we could maybe clear it up. And then he's like, oh, no, I don't want you to talk to him. Like, that would be awkward. And so then it's like, okay, so then what does that look like? That yeah, you just made that up to try to, like, build a case against your spouse. And it's really interesting for a couple of reasons. One is because in that scenario, I mean, he's just trying to throw anything that will get her to then feel like, oh my gosh, they really think that that's who I am, or that's how I am. And so that just, like, really rattles her, which is really fascinating. But it's also, let's just say that he, in some emotionally mature way, really wanted to have this mature discussion about something that she was doing that brought something up for him, trying to, like, but that would not be the way to do it, to say, hey, me and a whole bunch of other people think that you're doing this.
We've all been talking about you behind your back, and we decided this.
Yeah. Rachel Dawn, dismissive avoidance are motivated by self-protection through distancing. Oh, dismissive avoidant. Okay, I can see that. I can see that.
It's just like an avoidant attachment.
Yeah. But that self-protection through distancing, because the avoidant attachment style are people that were typically, they were more of the forgotten child when they were younger. They had to do a lot of things for themselves. And so this is where we start looking at that concept of the familiar. So if you grew up having to take care of yourself, then when you are going through something in your relationship, when other people would then want to turn to the person in the relationship in order to try to say, hey, I need help, that avoidant personality, the avoidant attachment style in general, at that point it's like it's what it it's the normal, the familiar for them to then kind of hunker down in a bunker and to say, no, I'm going to figure this out myself. And that typically means that there weren't people there for them when they were younger, because they couldn't rely on anybody else to help them. And so then I think that what makes
an anxious attached person then?
So
where does that stem from?
Okay, this is a good one. I've got some. Let me pull up the. There's a really.
Tell me why I'm like this.
But you're not though, because it has to do with your mom and dad, and your mom and dad are awesome. So they did everything right. Okay, that is awkward. And everyone else but you and me, no. This is just this is not a guaranteed thing, but I think you can build off of this, because one of the things that's so interesting is when we're talking about what makes an emotionally immature partner, what makes an anxious or an avoidant person, that these are the kind of like, these are these generic sets of circumstances that typically would guarantee.
There's
but there's exactly
DNA,
all that exactly
blah,
right.
Blah, blah, blah.
So this is an article from Psychology Today, and it's by Darlene Lancer. And what I dig is that she's an LMFT like myself, licensed marriage and family therapist, but also has her Juris Doctorate, so she is an attorney as well. That's pretty fancy, right? But so she just talks about this. I think this is really interesting. She says partners. Okay, the relationship duet, she says, is the dance of intimacy all couples do. One partner moves in, and then the other backs up, and then partners will reverse roles. And it's this pursuer-withdrawal attachment style, or dance that relationships do. So she said the unspoken agreement is that the pursuer chases the distancer forever, but they never catch up. And that the distancer keeps running, but they never really get away. And they're negotiating the emotional space between them. Because it's so fascinating, as a couples therapist now for almost 20 years, you see over and over again this, when finally maybe the anxiously attached person does pull away because they just feel like I'm losing my whole sense of self, that's almost when the avoidant tends to then step in. And now all of a sudden the anxiously attached is saying, oh my gosh, this is what I've always wanted. So they go big toward the avoidant, and that pushes the avoidant back. So it's this push and pull.
Yikes.
Yeah, right? So then she said we all have needs for both autonomy and intimacy, independence and dependency. And when I talk about differentiation, that's that need that we have, we need a relationship to interact with in order to then learn how to attach to somebody and maintain our sense of autonomy, or hold on to ourself. And that's like the goal of relationships, really, is to then, when I interact with this person, it brings up things for me, and then that teaches me more about who I am. But when we're in these emotionally immature relationships, we're so busy trying to manage each other's anxiety and emotions, and we're so afraid I shouldn't say it this way. So we're not even close to the part where we're starting to learn more about ourselves because we're trying to manage that other person's emotions. I don't know, jump in anytime though and tell me if like any of this sounds a little bit, you know.
I don't know.
He's vibing? Okay, here we go. So, attachment theories determine that the pursuer has an anxious attachment style and that the emotionally unavailable partner has an avoidance style. Research suggests that these styles and intimacy problems originate in the relationship between the mother and the infant. And I really have it's funny, I've done 600 podcasts now, and I stayed away from this for literally 300 or 400 of them because I didn't want, this is a me thing, the hardworking moms to feel like, oh my gosh, I did something wrong, because you'll see where this goes a little bit. So Darlene Lancer says that babies and toddlers are dependent on their mother's empathy and regard for their needs and emotions in order to sense their selves or to feel whole. And that's again where a little kid, any of us, we get our whole sense of self from external validation. So is somebody there for me? Are they there to meet my needs? Because as a baby, you can't do anything yourself. We're watching that in our house.
Babies can't do anything.
They can't do much of anything, right? They can be pretty cute and stuff. But then to an infant or toddler, physical or emotional abandonment, whether through neglect, illness, divorce, or death, threatens its existence. Now, I added, when I did this finally on a podcast, I just talked about, or if the mom is just going through life. And it's one of those things where what did that mom see modeled in her childhood? You know, was her mom struggling with things? Was her mom overwhelmed, emotionally overwhelmed? But then she goes on to say that, so she says to an infant or toddler, physical or emotional abandonment, whether through neglect, illness, divorce, or death, or I'll just say, or just life and all over you, then it threatens the baby's existence because of its dependency on the mother for validation and development of wholeness. Later, as an adult, being separate in intimate relationships, or separations in intimate relationships, are experienced as painful reminders of the earlier loss. Now, and the podcast I did about this, where's Dad? He's not off the hook. And I even said, you know, a lot of that might be his emotional immaturity that's causing the mom to really lose her sense of self. You know, if she's trying to manage his emotions, together. There's too much enmeshment and entanglement to go, where I think we just need to look at this with acceptance that, this is what does it, right?
It's not even worth kind of.
Yeah, so here's where it gets really interesting.
The origin.
Right? So she said if the mother is ill, depressed, or lacks wholeness and self-esteem, there are no boundaries between her and her child. So rather than responding to her child, she projects and sees her child as an extension of herself and as an object to meet her own needs and feelings. So there are times where she can't value her child as a separate self. And in those scenarios, the child's boundaries are violated, its autonomy, feelings, thoughts are disrespected. So then the child doesn't develop a healthy sense of self. And so what this looks like, though, is where, and I think this is so common for most everybody, where when the kid wants validation and they want to know that their parent cares, their parent might be just going through it. And so then that's where a lot of times if you're saying, man, I really need my parent right now, and the parent's busy, overwhelmed, or says, hey, you know, what you're dealing with right now, it's not as big of a deal, so can you just deal with that or handle that yourself? Or, you know what, we'll talk about this later, or just calm down, or those kind of things. That even, oh man, real nerd, you just described my entire childhood. Yeah, and so, and Kim, great question on how long does it take to develop your attachment style. We'll talk about that. But in this scenario, though, it's where, so when the kid is looking for this validation or safety, oftentimes the parent is in that moment going through their own things, and it's hard for the parent to stop, kind of get grounded, and then say, hey, what can I do for you? But then when the parent is feeling overwhelmed, this is what Darlene Lancer's saying, when the parent maybe is feeling overwhelmed and they want validation and want to feel like they're a good parent, now they're saying, who's my big boy, you know, or hey, you really love me, right? And then the kid's kind of like, yeah, I think so. I mean, sure, because if I don't,
what you need to say.
Because this is when I usually, like, now I get the praise. So what happens then is, so now you go out into the world as an adult, and now it's like, no, I want somebody to care about me, but then when they turn and care about you, then it's uncomfortable. Like, that's the part that blew me away.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't think that was even part of it.
Right? And so then it's like, so then that familiar becomes, as an adult, we're chasing the person that is not there to validate us, because that's the familiar. So if you had a parent that was maybe more emotionally unavailable, then that is familiar. So I'm going to find this partner that's more emotionally unavailable.
Interesting.
Yeah, right? Because if you're dating somebody in high school or whatever, and all of a sudden they are obsessed with you, we think, well, that's cool. But all of a sudden you're like, geez, back off a little bit, you know? Right? Because then that makes me uncomfortable. even though that's the thing that we think that we want. That part's so fascinating. So then she said later, intimacy may threaten an adult's sense of autonomy or identity, or they might feel invaded, engulfed, controlled, shamed, and rejected. So a person might feel both abandoned if his or her feelings and needs are not responded to, and at the same time engulfed by the needs of his or her partner. So in codependent relationships where there aren't two separate whole people coming together, intimacy isn't possible because the fears of non-existence and dissolution are so strong. And that's because, we learned these defenses in order for us to feel safe as a kid. And so you've got that as like the origin story of the anxious attached, and then the avoidant is right there on board too. So the avoidant all of a sudden is like, man, maybe their parent would just come on strong when the parent needed validation. So it's overwhelming to the kid. So they're going to go avoidant. And then if they're trying to get their needs met and the parents completely disappeared, sometimes the overly strong versions of that scenario then can cause that avoidant attach, or just the parents just kind of emotionally unavailable, which I think that happens a lot.
Okay, how long does it take though to develop your attachment style? Is it just when does that click?
So it's clicking. I mean, and I think part of it is I'm not just trying. Maybe the way to say it is there isn't. We used to think that your brain's locked in by whatever you hear 5, 12, 25. But
that's just not real.
No, it's really not, because the more we know about neuroplasticity of the brain, you can have an 80-year-old person that's learning new things. They might have more deeply rooted neural pathways, so it might take a little bit more time. But so here's what's kind of cool about this is that your attachment style, it's probably locked in there somewhere as it's showing up into adolescence and your teen and early adult years fairly early, because it's how you felt and it's what you saw modeled. But if you're going to therapy, if you're listening here and you're aware, like as an anxiously attached, now recognize that when I am feeling anxious and I want somebody else to tell me I'm okay, that's my opportunity to stop, kind of get grounded, and basically know that I'm okay.
So you can kind of change
Absolutely.
it.
Yeah, you really can.
It's not just set in stone. It's like, okay, that's what I have to deal with forever.
No, and that's what so many people do. They're like, oh, I'm anxiously attached, period.
It's like acceptance in a bad way almost.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay.
Yeah, but you start from a place of like, oh, I'm anxiously attached. That kind of makes sense based off of all the things that have brought me to this point in my life. So now when I notice that I am being anxious and I want somebody else to tell me I'm okay, there's that discomfort, and like we said earlier, that is my opportunity to self-confront and grow. Why do I need somebody to tell me I'm okay right now?
Right.
Is it because I'm feeling emotionally overwhelmed or that sort of thing? Yeah. Okay, that's a good question. Let's see. All right, let's go back to the questions. How does codependency work into attachment styles? So I like that question, Chris, and I say, so I think that we all go into relationships, all of us, and codependent and enmeshed. Because we're finding this kind of the familiar, we're finding the person maybe that's a little bit more, we're chasing the person that's avoidant, or we're pursuing the person that's avoidant, or the avoidant person is feeling pretty like, oh, this is kind of interesting, the person that's like chasing after them. And so then at that point though, we're just we so desire to be with somebody, not be alone, that then we start just we kind of say the things that we know that we can agree on. That's where you feel like early in a relationship, all these we agree on so many things. We see we're on the same page of so many things, and there's nothing wrong with. That's the way we show up. But often what we're doing is we're kind of keeping those things that we feel are a little bit more scary and vulnerable. We're keeping those in our inside voice, right? And then on the outside, we're like, I like that movie too.
That's so great. We are the same.
Right? It's like, how about that sports? And if you're like, I'm not really a big sports person, you're like, man, how about those? Huh? I really like that stuff. And then you're hoping the person doesn't say, well, what's your favorite sport? But I don't know, did you ever have that? Like, can you think of times like that where you're like, oh yeah, I love that too, but you kind of didn't?
Oh yeah, we've talked about this before, where there was definitely a time where it was just whatever the other person said, because I didn't want to disagree or have them think I was lame or stupid.
Yeah. Right.
So I would just, if someone was like, oh, this movie, I'd be like, yeah, I've totally seen that.
And then do you like hope that they don't ask you?
And I'm like, don't say anything.
Don't ask me.
Please.
Mackie and I, bringing back The Mind, the Mirror, and Me, we do a podcast together, and I really liked when we were doing the one, what was the episode about where we were talking about going to a movie, and then I think about this all the time, Mac. I just went to a movie with the
Barbie movie?
Yeah, and it was like, but that was
I
like.
don't remember what the episode was.
Well, okay, but
yeah, I remember talking about that.
When it was like, do you remember we went and saw a movie, and it was you, then me, and Mom, and then we were talking about like it had some funny parts, had some kind of interesting parts, and you were like, do you guys? How do you put it? Are you wondering what the other person's thinking while they're watching the movie? Is that what you had asked?
Yeah.
Yeah, talk about that. I thought that was really interesting.
Well, I feel like I did that for every time, and I just attributed it to the people pleaser in me, but any movie we've ever gone to together, the whole time we're watching it, I'm so much more focused on, like, are they having fun?
Yeah.
Do they like it?
Yeah.
Do they want to be here? Are they miserable? And then finally, when the Barbie movie came out, I went by myself, and it was like the craziest experience of my whole life.
You were scared going in, right?
I was so scared going in, but it was just me by myself, and I felt that movie so different than any movie I've ever felt. A, because it's a good movie, and it makes you feel things.
It was.
But more so because it was just me, and there was no part of me being like, is this person liking it? Do they want to be here? It was just me and my experience.
Yeah.
And then I've tried to carry that through to now when we go see movies, where I'm like, it doesn't matter what you guys think.
Totally.
Like, I'm here for me.
Well, it's funny because you nailed it. Then when we say that, it's hard to not think we're being selfish.
Yeah, but it's okay when when you all agreed to go to a movie together. It's okay to sit there and just enjoy it for yourself.
It is.
And then afterwards, you can just, if someone says, "Yeah, I didn't really like it," then you go, "Oh, okay."
Exactly.
I did.
Yeah. So
Tell me more.
Well,
Like,
and so we went. I
it's not that deep.
I was in California a couple nights ago, and I took your cousins and my brother and sister-in-law, the Fergusons, to. We went and saw the movie Trapped, M. Night Shyamalan, and I was so excited to see it. It's the one where, do you see that? There's a I gotta do the puzzle to make sure the live doesn't end. That started to freak me out there.
I didn't see it. I've never even seen the trailer.
But it's about this serial killer. Spoiler, dang it.
I can't even watch it.
But he's at this concert of somebody with his daughter.
Oh, no, I did see the trailer.
Yeah,
I did. I'm sorry. I did.
Did it look good?
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't realize that's what... I've seen people post about it. Did not put that together. But
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was so excited about it, and so we all went and saw it. And first of all, one of the things I did that maybe I wish I didn't do, but I love when I don't know what's going on in a movie, kind of. And so right before, I was like, we're there already. I'm going to look at the Rotten Tomato scores.
Rookie mistake.
It really was, because the critics was like a 46, and then it's like in slow motion, I look over to the audience, and I'm like, it's going to be in the 90s, and it was like 67.
Brutal.
I know, but I loved it.
Oh,
I did. I thought it was amazing. Yeah,
good.
I do. Oh, I think it was Isaiah Polk. Thank you for that. Send the rose. Probably for you.
Thanks.
Okay, but in this movie, though, I really enjoyed it. But then when we get out of the movie, this is my whole point. I think we do this now. I just said, okay, everybody, lock in your opinion, because you can tell when
anyone else say anything.
Yeah, because you can tell when somebody's like, "Well, I don't know. What'd you think?" No, I think that is the place to practice. This is my opinion.
It's way more fun to just own it and just own exactly what you thought about it. And again, if you disagree on things, it doesn't matter. It's just a conversation then.
Yeah, and the reason that was a long way to get to that story. But when we were talking about, when I'm saying we're all codependent and meshed, that you can see that then if you are two people, and let's say one of you just did not like the movie in the beginning, but you like this person and you really think that maybe we would get along and they're attractive and I don't want to be alone, and we're thinking, and maybe a lot of this is happening in the subconscious, then all of a sudden if they say I really liked it, then it's really, really easy to go, I kind of did too. But then this is where, do you really want intimacy in a relationship, or are you just looking for validation? Because validation is like, oh yeah, me too. Because real true intimacy is this ability to know yourself, and so then I'm going to be known. I'm going to be able to say, hey, tell me what you liked about it. And then it's like, oh, okay, I get that. I can understand that. Or because to me, I saw it a whole different way.
Right.
But that
so it's just
sounds
another
scary.
Conversation to have. It's not.
It really is. Yeah.
So it's okay to disagree.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Okay. Where else where should we go next? We got a bunch of questions. Where? Okay, that was the codependency working into attachment styles. Okay.
A good one to go out on.
Oh, are we ready to go?
I mean, we're close.
Oh, it's been an hour.
Yeah.
Okay. Lila, what's the name and author of the piece you're referencing? That was from that Attachment Styles a little while ago, and it's from a Psychology Today article by a Darlene Lancer called "Attachment Woes Between Anxious and Avoidant Partners." And anybody that is listening, feel free to. You can send me an email. You can send me if you have questions, maybe even for a different live, because we're back. We're going to be doing these. We were trying to do them about twice a week, and then we got off our game a little bit, but we're committed, right? But you can send it through my website at tonyoverbay.com, or you can send it to contact@tonyoverbay.com. Go ahead and send those questions in. I would actually love it if you signed up for my email newsletter or listen to the podcast. I think that would be great too. So, all right, we want to go big. We want to end with something big?
Yeah.
Wait, okay.
What you got?
The question is... Okay, so we've got...
You have to make it a good one.
Okay.
Pressure's on.
Okay. Man, there's good ones here. Here's the thing. I can create subscribe to the podcast too. On the Virtual Couch podcast, I'm going to do some more Q&As coming up, so I will take these and answer them as well. There's stuff about loneliness, particularly talk about mental health while keeping in mind generational stigmas without seeming.
We
That's
have a good
great one.
The Mind, the Mirror, and Me. We have an episode about solitude.
Yeah.
And loneliness.
Yeah. Okay, and there's a real nerd had a great one about setting boundaries with my parents, and they immediately say I'm dramatic. Okay, let's go with the one about confidence. Oh, should we do that one? Farley Leathercraft is a fairly new therapist. I really like that. I did not know that. Your answers were great. Racing thoughts. I'm worried about anything. Mac, what do you think? How do you break the cycle? Okay, how do you break the cycle caused by the mom to form healthy relationships? Okay, here's a good one. Let's do this. I understand cognitively that a person isn't good for me, yet I'm unable to let go. What to do?
Don't look at me. You're a therapist.
Well, what I think is interesting about that one is what I appreciate that is that and that's the one. Yeah, okay. I understand cognitively that a person isn't good for me, yet I'm unable to let go. What to do?
So when there's feelings involved, it's so hard. So it's like I don't know.
So the first thing, and I know I've said this earlier tonight, and I will say it because this was a game changer for me personally. I look at it as this path of enlightenment or the path of awareness where we don't know what we don't know. Mm-hmm. Now we know, but we're not sure what to do, and we're there for quite a while, and that's a pretty uncomfortable place to be because now that we're aware, we think I should be able to do something about this.
Right.
But then eventually you do more than you don't, and finally you become. It just is what it is to be you. So the fact that you're aware now, I understand cognitively that this person isn't good for me, but I'm unable to let go. So now we're looking at what we talked about earlier, where we're all codependent and enmeshed. Yeah, maybe I can finish this thing. So most likely, I would imagine that you found yourself in that relationship because there were some things that you did find that you appreciated maybe about this person, or it could just be that the person they were paying attention to you, and that's so normal. And so a lot of times then we just overlook a lot of things. We turn red flags yellow, or we might even just pretend that they're green flags, or we just ignore them. And then the more that, and that's normal, again, so normal. So the more that you interact with this person in your relationship, that's where it goes back to the more you're learning about yourself. I really don't like it when they do this, or I don't like how I feel in the relationship or who I am. Now that's good data for you. I think one of the problems is that when you are going through that, it's natural to default to that's what's wrong with me. I shouldn't feel this way. But I want to flip that and to say, nothing's wrong with you. It's the first time that it's you going through life as you in this relationship. So check that out. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. It's the first time that they maybe said this or done this, or maybe it's not even the first time. But when they do this is how I feel. Now, in a healthy relationship, we're able to express that. If you're coming from a place of confidence, you're able to say, hey, tell me about what you're thinking when you say this. When you tell me that I'm such a loser, I don't really like the way that feels. Now, if the person says, oh, geez, okay, sorry, loser,
Loser.
Right? That probably not a good fit,
Yeah.
But if the person all of a sudden is like, oh man, I'm so sorry. In my family, we throw around the word loser like it's nothing. But what was that like in your family, right? Yeah. Right? And that's the thing where I think there is a version of a relationship where people can express themselves because they're not trying to manipulate, coerce, control, or just get validation. And they're saying, when you say this is how I feel. And so in a mature relationship, that person is going to say, okay, they're not going to immediately go, oh, okay, sorry, I'll never say it again. But it might be like, oh man, I'm so sorry. Tell me more about that. What's that feel like for you? Why does that bring that up for you? Because then we both want to feel heard. We both want to be understood. And so in that scenario, then being able to express yourself is a way to grow. In this relationship, when you say this, I feel this. I'm owning that. That's a me thing. But then if the person is saying, oh, well, we're in this thing together, so let's figure out the better ways to communicate, that's brilliant. So the reason I went into that big thing is sometimes I don't think we even know what healthy relationships look like if we never saw them modeled. Like I find that a lot in therapy, where I'll start talking about what a healthy relationship looks like, and I'll watch the person just kind of glaze over.
They're like, no idea what you're talking about.
Okay, well, what do you do when he's called me like a whatever for the third time?
You're like, back it up.
Right.
Like, hear me for a second.
Okay, let me put away the rainbow, the unicorn, and the pot of gold, and then we'll just go right back to that.
Here we go.
So then, but if you feel like you have tried to maybe express that, and that person wasn't saying, hey, I'm so sorry, or that wasn't, this is what this means to me, but if that's what this means to you, I can understand that would be difficult, and I can work on that. But in that scenario, though, and I wonder if this is the person.
I think it is.
Okay, that's I worked so hard to get them to acknowledge the impact on me and didn't step away. I love that you said I worked so hard to get them to acknowledge the impact on me, because that's all you can do a lot of times is like
you can't force them to take action.
We want to, like, but then, and I think that's the part where it's really interesting when you learn the language of differentiation, when you start hearing people ask me questions, how do I get them to understand? And so it's like, how can I express myself so that there's a possibility that they can understand if they are willing to be curious. And if they're, and that's what a relationship is for you, which is wonderful. So, we learn about ourselves in interacting with other human beings. But I'm learning about myself. But when I need that person to understand, that's really me wanting validation. I would love it if that person understands, but really, I need to understand what's happening with me, what's going on the inside, and then express myself. At that point, I'm making this bid. I'm saying, hey, this is what's important to me. And if they look at that and they're like, man, thank you. Or sometimes they throw it on the ground and stomp all over it. And then that's where I have to realize I don't need to beg somebody to love me, to validate me, to approve of me, to, and that's, now tie back to the Barbie movie, I am enough.
You are enough.
Right?
Forever and always.
Yeah, but I really like this so much because, and I appreciate the thought explanation, your kindness towards my share. Well, and I appreciate your question because I think it's one of the most common things I see in therapy is the person and I would put you in this pathologically kind, like kindness is in your bones. So then what do? We go to try to figure out what's wrong with me.
There's nothing wrong with you.
Nothing at all. That you are this brilliant combination of your nature and your nurture and your birth order and your DNA and your abandonment, your rejection and your hopes and your fears and your dreams, where you live, what you eat, all the things that go into you. So that's a lot of variables that's coming into a relationship. And I would hope that you would find yourself in a relationship with somebody that wants to understand and know all those wonderful things. Just like I would imagine you want to know all those wonderful things about that person. And that's real intimacy. And that's like a connection. But if that person is tuning you out and they're telling you, okay, I didn't ask any, whatever that is, that's really not somebody that ultimately is someone good to be in a relationship with, because you should not need to beg somebody to care.
Right. We do not beg people to love us.
No, we don't. We do not. But I get the point, and I think this is what's so difficult is when people talk about the, self-love, that I need to love myself. Does that sound like cliched? Truthfully,
yes.
It does, right?
But it's true.
It is, and I often feel like that's one that people ask me. I don't even know what that means, and it's because we're raised not being seen or heard. I'll end with a big concept about secure attachment in childhood, because I think this is something that we're barely figuring out. So those of you in the younger generation, this is your job. If you have kids, first of all, it's to find out who you are, because if I am okay, if I can figure out myself now when I'm interacting with, let's say, my kid, and they're coming up to me and they're having an experience, instead of me saying, oh man, why'd you do that, or you shouldn't do that, or we don't say that, or we don't do that. Well, because they actually just did say that, and that is what they did. So they're being told, well, what you're doing as you, not good. Versus tell me about that. Tell me what happened there. Tell me why you did that. And then I'm providing a secure attachment, that I'm saying that you are okay, and basically checking in, are you good, or how can I help, or how can I help you show up? And then when that person operates from this place where they have a secure attachment with their parent, then they know that they're okay. So they're now going to go and interact with the world, and they are going to be able to then come back to this home base and know that their parent is there for them. Now, if they do something, I don't know, wreck the car or something, yeah, the parent can be disappointed, but let's first check in and say, what happened? Are you okay? Tell me more. Because the kid needs to know that this is the first time that they were in that situation and that happened, and I know that my parent is going to be there for me. They can be disappointed because maybe I'm disappointed myself, but that doesn't mean something's wrong with me or I'm bad, that sort of thing. Maggie, thanks for coming. The Mind, the Mirror, Me. When are we releasing another episode of that?
Maybe one day.
Okay. But go find it. Sid, thank you for moderating tonight. And then will you join, can we get the three of us together next time?
Yeah, okay.
Okay, Sid, Mackie, and I are going to be back. I'm in town all week this week. So maybe Wednesday night?
Okay.
Okay. Let's plan on that right now. Wednesday night, Mackie, Sydney, and I all here. We want your questions. Great to see everybody.
Yeehaw.
Remember who you are, what you stand for. Sid said yeehaw. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night. Take care. Tip your waitresses. We'll be here all week. And waiters. And let me find the button. Wait, hang on.
Press the button.
There we go. Thanks, everybody. Good night.